All right, I want to welcome you to the Do Work Podcast. The Do Work Podcast is a weekly podcast where we discuss all things mindset, motivation, free thinking, which is crucial nowadays, and how to live your best life possible. And today is no different. So, the topic of today's episode is when to fight back. Now, the thing that made me bring this up was I was watching Creed 3. Don't judge me. I'm late to the party just because I've been on the road. But anyway, I was watching Creed 3. And if you saw it, the whole premise is essentially that, Donnie has to fight his old homeboy because they have beef that they just clearly could not squash. And the only way for them to end this 20-year beef was to fight, to physically to get into a physical altercation. Like words were not enough. So as I'm watching it, one, I was bawling my eyes out like a little baby because I get like that sometimes because I love boxing and I love Cinderella stories, so to speak. But the thing that really got me and got me thinking was, when is physical violence acceptable and when aren't words enough? So growing up as a kid, I've often told you guys, my mother's a preacher. My daddy was a hustler. He's deceased now, but may he rest in peace. He's a street dude. And when it came to getting into fights or physical violence, I clearly had two mindsets in my household. My mother, preacher, she's a pacifist for the most part. And my dad, he was a street dude. He always was, he's always ready to fight, amongst other things, allegedly. But so I remember I was telling somebody recently, there was this whole protocol because my mother was also a school teacher about how we acted when we got in fights and if altercations arose, how we would deal with them within the school system. Yes, this went on in my house. So my mother's mindset was pretty much turn the other cheek. Now, for all you parents, you're probably like, what? Remember, my mother was a preacher. So it was always, first, it was turn the other cheek. Like, whatever happens, let it go. So I remember there was a situation where this girl was bothering me in class. I must have been in like fourth grade or something like that. And I asked my mom, I told her, I said, Mommy, this girl keep bothering me. She won't leave me alone. And my mom was like, before you get into a fight, she didn't say you could not resort to violence. Mind you, I'm paraphrasing, but there were all these other steps that needed to happen before we got to a physical altercation. So it was like the first step was essentially tell the person, like, leave me alone, get out my space, stop. Boom. Second step, raise your hand, tell the teacher. I'll never forget this. Third step, which my mom was a G for this in hindsight, leave the classroom. Now, mind you, this was fourth grade. I went to school in North Philadelphia, Paul Lawrence Dunbar Elementary School. Leave the school. I mean, not the school. Leave the classroom. Walk to the principal's office and let the principal know that someone was bothering you in class and the teacher didn't do anything about it. Like, that's real savage, especially coming from a fourth grader. And then lastly, if all that was done and nothing was resolved, handle your business. My mother never said, like, go fight somebody. She would always be like, handle your business. All right, Mom, got it. Told you, my dad was a street dude. So he would be like, if somebody hit you, you just hit them back. Which I know a lot of parents are like that, for the most part. So the question is, when is physical violence okay? So now we're talking about as children, right? You're talking about a fourth grader. So I have a few questions for you guys. And the first question is simply this. What do you teach your kid in reference to how to deal with, and now everybody calls it bullying or whatever. I don't know about all that. Some of the shit is just whatever. But if they're being bothered in school, do you teach them to walk away? What do you teach them? And the second thing is, now let's get into you as an adult. When is physical violence acceptable? Now, I'm not talking about you in the workplace having a discrepancy with somebody and y'all don't like each other and y'all can't come to terms on the project. That's not a physical violence situation. I don't know, maybe you're out at a bar and somebody's a little too drunk and they want to just start a fight with you. What do? Maybe you're somewhere with a group of people who happen to get into a fight. As an adult, when do you, one, walk away, or two, engage? So the reason I say that is this. I think there's a point, and I still do truly believe, one, from what my mother taught me, and I still honestly go by this. I still truly believe you should always try to diffuse the situation, whatever it may be. You should always try and diffuse the situation. Like somebody want to, all right. I mean, and you know what I'm talking about. Somebody wants to fight. Like y'all about to come to blows. Look, we good. I'ma just leave. Right. I'ma walk away. Hands up, back up. Right. Walk away. I do always feel you should try and diffuse the situation. If it is a recurring situation, now it gets a little complicated because if you've constantly tried to diffuse the situation and the situation keeps coming up and words may not be enough. I've always said adults especially have this mindset of we're adults. We should use our words. And I do agree we should use our words, but sometimes words aren't enough. And you got to punch somebody in the face. It is what it is. You got to punch somebody in the face. Like sometimes the communication just isn't there. And some people need to be hit. Some adults need to be hit. Yeah, they just need to be cracked because they wild and they think you won't. I'm also a firm believer in there. A lot of people will be like, what you going to do? Especially adults, I've noticed. They're real quick to be like, people will argue and do the finger pointing thing and get in your face and like, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? And they thinking you just gonna argue and at that point you may need to crack them in the face. So, as an adult, when is violence acceptable? When is it acceptable for you to put your hands on another person? Now, I know a lot of people will say, well, it's never acceptable to put your hands on people. You should always use your words. Part of the reason we have wars is because people can no longer use their words. We can no longer have discussions. We've tried to come to terms and it ain't working. So you know what? Let's just fight. Sometimes, I've had some very interesting phases in my life. I'll never forget this. I was even as a younger adult in my 20s. Yeah, even in my 20s, I would still occasionally get into altercations because people wanted to press the issue. And I'll never forget, I had a friend, and this is definitely paraphrasing this story because it's very long. But pretty much it was like, yo, one of those, I need you to come meet me. And I'm like, oh, all right, it's late, but I'll come meet you. So I come out and meet them. I get there. And it's about to be a full out brawl. So I come up and I'll never forget it. They were like, the other side was like, oh, so you called Diva. And I'm looking like, call me for what? So I get there. And essentially everybody was about to come to blows. So I do what I do because honestly, I am a super nonviolent person. I really don't. I don't believe in fighting, but I will tell you, even as an adult, there are going to be times where you're going to have to put your hands on people because words aren't enough. And if you have any instances of that, I would love for you to share it in the comments. And if you're a grown adult, that's kind of like a double something, and you've never had a fight in your life, wow. How? Maybe it's just where I grew up. I don't know. But I have met a few adults who are like, I've never been in a fight. I'm like, never? Like, you ain't never been in no fight? Anyway, let's get back to the story. So pretty much everybody's about to fight. And I'm like, yo, let's just squash it. Because I remember it was late. It was like 1:30 in the morning. I'm like, yo, it's late. Let's just squash this. Nothing good's coming out of this, guys. Let's just squash it. And the other side is pretty much like, no. She said blah, 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 and F you, diva. I said, look, that's fine. Again, it's 1:30 in the morning. I ain't trying to fight nobody. I want to go home, go to bed, live to see another day. So, yeah. Sometimes, you can't walk away from stuff. So things started to escalate. It would have been great to walk away, but sometimes walking away puts you in more danger. Sometimes you can't just walk away. So in that situation, 1:30 in the morning. So we in the street and we fight, and I wound up beating up on some girl and her boyfriend and whatever. It escalated. We break it up. Everybody leaves. Everybody go home. So you're probably like, Diva, where the hell is this coming from? I told you, I was watching Creed 3, and two bros, grown-ass men, could not come to any type of resolution of their differences, and not only after they fought was it resolved. So I say this to say that sometimes violence is necessary. It is. I don't think it should be your first resort ever, but it's necessary. And I know anybody who's been in law enforcement or military, I'll probably be the first to tell you they don't want to get in a fight, whatever that fight may be, but they're ready for the fight. If the fight comes to them, they're ready. If they have to run into it, they're ready. But they always try to diffuse the situation first. So I'm curious what people are teaching their children, because I notice, like, I look online a lot and I see a lot of things about bullying and things like that. And a lot of it, it's not even physical, it's words. Like it's words. It's like people are just talking trash, or other kids are talking trash, and social media is different, because when we were growing up, we didn't have to deal with that. Like, if somebody talked trash on you, you only had to deal with them at school. It wasn't like you went home and you went on Instagram and they were still talking trash. Now, I went to boarding school, so if you had an issue, it just never ended. Like, you had it at school, you had it in the dorms, you had it in the cafeteria. Like, if you had an issue with somebody, pretty much y'all was having an issue, and eventually you probably would wind up fighting. Just because words weren't enough. And unfortunately, some people in this world like to really, take advantage of people and be assholes until they are shown that you're not weak-minded or a weak person. So, two big things here. What do you teach your kids in reference to fighting? I really want to know. I don't have small children, so I don't know what people are teaching their kids these days. Are they teaching their kids to fight? Because I will say my uncles were all black belts. They were all black belts and military dudes, so it was very common for them to want to teach me something, some crazy block, kick, neck choke, something crazy. My uncles always did that stuff. Those are the type of dudes I grew up with. And then there was the other ones, but they was crazy, and I wasn't doing what they was doing. So what do you teach your kids in reference to violence? And as an adult, if an altercation arises, would you fight? Have you ever been in a fight? I'm curious, like, physically, would you be ready if you had to be in a fight? If you had to fight somebody and they wouldn't back down? You couldn't resolve the issue. Or would you attempt to turn your back and walk away? I don't know. It's something to think about. This is what happened. I was watching Creed 3. This is how we got here. I was watching Creed 3. And like I said, sometimes turning your back on people is more dangerous than going into the fire. Sometimes trying to walk away is not a good idea, because that other person might keep coming. So, what do you teach your kids, man? I'm curious. And how do you respond in situations where you realize, like, oh shit, I'm really going to have to fight? Like, I'm not going to be able to walk away from this. I'm not going to be able to diffuse this. Like, what do you do? Something to think about. All right, fam. Put it in the comments too. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, I'm curious to what you think. Like, what do you guys do? Because I know even as an adult now, I will fight you. I'm usually pretty good at diffusing stuff, so it never gets that far, but 100%, 100%, I will fight you. Because you know what we're not going to do? We're not going to push buttons, and we're not going to act a fool, and you're not going to test me in those ways. Like, I will still fight you as an adult. And if somebody's like, Diva, that's so immature. If it gets to the point that I have to do that, I promise you, I tried to be mature for a long time, and then some people just gotta get knocked in the head. It is what it is. So anyway, I want to thank you for tuning into the Do Work Podcast. All right, Do Work Podcast is a weekly podcast where we discuss all things mindset, motivation, free thinking, and how to live your best life possible. Today was no different. So remember to put in the comments, tell me what you think. What do you teach your children in reference to fighting? And have you ever been in a fight? Period. And have you been in a fight in your adult life? I'm curious. These are the things I think about. And this is what happened when I watched Creed 3 today. All right, guys. Have an amazing day and be great.